There's two important tenets of our faith that if these things didn't happen, I wouldn't be wasting my time being a priest. And these two tenets of our faith that are so critical to us being here today also revolve around our two major feast days, two solemn days that we have in the church. The first is Christmas, the fact that God became man. Like, for me, that's a deal breaker. If God didn't become man, then I don't want to say wasting my time, but I wouldn't be a priest if God didn't become man. And the second is what we just celebrated, that God died, God was buried, God rose from the dead, and that God appeared, in our humanity. If that didn't happen, again, I would find something else to do with my life. And those are really the two things that essentially make us a Christian, because all the other faiths and religions out there, there's a lot of good things about them, and preaching about, things like, again, virtue and kindness. Obviously, we do as well. But what makes us Christian is that God became man, and then God in our humanity died, buried, rose, and appeared. That separates us from everything else. And so the last 2 weeks we've been reflecting, and this week is our last week in the Easter season of looking at the resurrection text. We'll be moving on to different subjects, different themes in the Easter season. And so 2 weeks ago, it was the empty tomb, right? Like, the resurrection begins with an empty tomb. If people are seeing Jesus, but the body's still in the tomb, then what are they seeing? They're seeing an apparition, they're seeing a ghost, they're seeing a spirit. But they're not seeing the crucified Lord. Okay, so the empty tomb is one important component. But then, along with the empty tomb, as we saw last week, it's what? It's the appearance. That's also crucial. Because if there's an empty tomb but no appearances, then someone took the body of Jesus. But I also say that today, if we look at our readings today, and again, without the risk of repeating myself the last 2 weeks, I think there's also a third important component, at least for me, with the resurrection. And the word appeared in the first reading, and it appears in today's gospel. It's the very last line of the gospel, and that is of witnesses. The resurrection is only as good as if people are witness to it, and people are telling others about it. And for me, it's the witnesses. It's that third one. Why I believe that the resurrection is a historical event. It's not a myth or fairy tale, but something that happened in the course of human history. I think that's also crucial, to being a Christian, the belief in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And we only know this because of the witnesses. And if we look at it in terms of apologetics, if this was made up by these apostles, by these disciples, if this story was fabricated, what a very poor story to fabricate. There's so many things in the resurrection account where it's like, why did it happen this way? Again, like why did he appear to Mary Magdalene first? Because back in the Roman culture, back in the time of Jesus in the Roman culture, sometimes the testimony of women didn't have the same amount of weight, that it has of a man. Again, back in Roman culture there. So why, if you were going to make it up, why have him appear to a woman first? And then also, as you read the stories, they don't believe it. Right? We heard last week with Thomas. And even in today, in Luke's version, they see him, but they don't believe. So what do they have to do? They have to put their hands on his hand and on his side. They have to watch him eat fish. Because their own eyes, right in front of them, they're still not believing that this is a resurrected body. And even when you read the Acts of the Apostles, St. Paul's talking to the Greeks, and he's talking philosophy, and they're very intrigued with what St. Paul has to say. But as soon as St. Paul talks about the resurrection of the dead in the Acts of the Apostles, what happens? Many of the Greeks, they walk away, kind of like, yeah, resurrection of the dead. Okay, buddy, you know? It's not a message to be believed. So again, if this is all fabrication, you wouldn't say that a man rose from the dead. But even more importantly, why I believe because of these witnesses is the very fact that they lost everything because of it. Again, they told a story that's like almost impossible, a story that no one would believe. But what they're doing is they're just telling them what they've seen and what they touched with their hands. All they can do is just say, look, this is what happened. You know? This is what happened. And it changed the whole way and the whole outlook of their lives. So much so where like this problem of death doesn't even become a thing to be afraid of anymore. I mean, just imagine that. To not be afraid of death. I know I can't say that. And I believe in the resurrection. But you have people like St. Paul, you know, in his letters talk about all the hardships that he's going through. And for him, it's okay. It's okay because he saw the risen Christ. And he willingly laid down his life. He became a martyr, which in the word martyr for Greek is witness. How did he become a witness? By ultimately what? His testimony, his greatest testimony is his own martyrdom. And that's what keeps me going. And this is why, you know, like I'm a priest, because the one problem that we didn't have a solution, the problem of sin and the problem of death, has been overcome by the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And the more that we believe in that, the more that it is ingrained, the more that our own outlooks of life change. And I see it. I've seen it in 14 years. I've seen people and parishioners who have had that faith. I've seen people pass away with like such bravery and calmness and peacefulness because of their strong faith. It really does, it changes. The more that the risen Christ is incorporated into our hearts, the more that we really believe it, the more that things change in a good way for us. But I can tell you, I still have a long way to go. Maybe you do too, but maybe some of you out there, you're like, yeah, I know what you mean, Father. I know what you mean. St. Paul says also in his letters that, again, if Christ isn't risen, then our faith is in vain. You know, we're here, we worship, we believe in the Eucharist, in the real presence. All this is possible. We have hope in our funerals. We have hope when we bury someone we love because we firmly believe and acknowledge that Jesus is risen from the dead. As I like to tell people, I'll end with this. You know, like someone like Monsignor Doman will golf in and he misses a putt and he gets all upset. I like to say, well, Jesus Christ is risen from the dead, so you have that going for you. You know, you have that going for you. And, you know, in a way that's true. You know, no matter, you know, how bad life is, Jesus Christ is risen from the dead. And we have that going for us. That's pretty good. May God bless you.